have a very short time and a lot to tell you. So I'm going to be a bit fast because the first thing is to tell you who are the people who participated in this. You can see the list there. And then the two things to let you know is what's the new thing about the thing that we're working for. The first thing is that we are using a new data system. There have been a study, the study has been looking at the vegetation index, which is called NDVI. Now, in our study, we corrected for carbon fertilization and also rainfall variability, such that the changes in vegetation can more be attributed to anthropogenic changes rather than rainfall variability and other things. And the other approach that we are using that has not been used before, we are using the total economic value approach, meaning that definition of land degradation by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment says that the long-term loss of ecosystem value. This means that the total economic value approach that we are using is according to the definition of land degradation by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Our assessment is going to be looking at the total economic value and the losses. Do I need this one? I think I'm loud enough. Okay, fine. Now, given that we are going to be looking at the long-term and a broad definition of land degradation, we are going to be seeing things that we have not seen before. To look at the land degradation, we are looking at land degradation from two aspects. The first aspect of land degradation is due to land use change. If you cut a forest and instead you plant millet, there is a loss of the ecosystem services that are provided by the forest. If you plant sorghum, for example, low value crop, there is a loss. And that loss, if you look at the total economic value, and I'm going to show you those values, and you'll see that there is a loss of ecosystem services if you replace a forest with sorghum, for example. And we are using MODIS data to look at the land use change. The MODIS data is very good because it has been ground truth, and it has been verified that the data that if it shows that there was a change from one type, from one biome to another, that's exactly what it is. And the other source of land degradation comes from the traditional land degradation that we have been seeing, and that is the agricultural land using land degrading management practices, for example, using fertilizer, less fertilizer that we know very well, and which has been documented a lot in the past. We are also looking at that, and to be able to determine that land degradation on a land that did not change from the baseline period to the endline period, it remained the same, but the land management practices used, we are land degrading. And that, to achieve that, we did a global level crop simulation and also livestock, even though we now are going to be reporting only on the crop simulation results and not the livestock results. And then on top of that, we are ground truthing all the things that we have seen, even the MODIS data and all that, using the focus group discussion. As we speak, there are people in the field who are doing exactly that. Now, let's first of all begin with the global extent of land degradation and improvement, with and without correction for carbon fertilizer. The map which is showing and rainfall variability. This is the one. This is the map which is showing land degradation using the same data, NDVI, and look at the concentration of land degradation. It's in the tropics, right? I'm going to replay back. Look at this. Land degradation is both in the tropics and in the temperate regions. It's in the poor countries and rich countries. Very different perspective. Now, the other thing is, what's the relationship between land degradation as we are defining? Because we are talking about answer to the relationship between and the poverty and the improvement. And look at West Africa. That's where you are seeing the blue. Meaning that the poor people can manage to have land improvement. Look at India. That's where you're seeing the blue. That's something which is very significant. It is telling us a story and begging the question that why do we see land improvement in poverty areas and areas which are rich, but still there is land degradation. And that's something which is quite important. Now, let's go to the big question. What's the cost of land degradation? Again, we are using the total economic value approach to be able to assess this. And what we are seeing that in the past, the studies have been looking at land degradation. They have estimated, for example, there was an FAO study which was done in 2007. It was about $40 billion annually. That's a loss. And another study which is very recent, 2013, by UNCCD, it estimated about $490 billion per year. Our results are very different because these studies are not looking at the total economic value, the loss of ecosystem services, which is the definition by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. So what do we see? As I have said, we are using the total economic value approach. And where did we get the total economic values? We got them from the database of the TIB, the TIB study which was done. It has done a lot of studies, and let me just show you the map. There were a total of about 330 different studies across the globe, and you can see their distribution, that it was quite well distributed, meaning that the values and studies that we are using are quite broadly representative. And we now can compare the difference between looking at the provisioning services, which was the past studies were just looking at the loss of provisioning services, and the total economic value. Look at the orange. The orange is the value, the total economic value, and then the green one is the provisioning services. Look at the tropical forest. We are just accounting for less than 50% of the value that is lost if we cut a forest, if we only look at the provisioning services, which is the approach of the past studies. And you can see the other biomes as well. Now, we did one thing, that we looked at the baseline period was 2001, and we looked at the total economic value of all the biomes in the world. And you can see the rich countries are not only in the north and west. Even in the south, we can see that there are quite big endowments. But the problem is, when you look at total economic value, the benefits are not internalized at the place where the biome exists. Carbon sequestration, for example, is a benefit to the whole world. So the map that I'm going to show, I was actually showing you the thing that we know. This is the GDP, which looks at only the very few aspects. But this is the map which is showing the endowment of ecosystem services. You can see Canada is very well endowed, but look, even African countries, they are well endowed. But the problem is, the benefits are not internalized. So this is a fake, sort of false indication of the endowment of those resources, because the benefits are global in many aspects. Now, what is the cost of land degradation? In total, we are seeing that the total cost of land degradation was about $15 billion per year. And if you look at sub-Saharan Africa alone, this one is contributing about 0.22%. But if you look at only the cropland and the loss of those ecosystem services from the cropland. This is DSAT model, and this is just for the cropland. This is the degradation for the cropland alone. And we included wheat, maize, and rice. We did the crop simulation on a global basis. And you can see that in total there was a loss of about $15 billion US. Now look at the case where we are looking at the total economic value. The total loss globally of due to land degradation is about 3.5 trillion US. This is quite big from the other studies that we have seen, $3.5 trillion annually. Now, the thing which is interesting is that, I should come here. We looked at the distribution where the largest loss is coming from. Look at sub-Saharan Africa. In terms of GDP, it contributes only 1.5% of the global GDP. But look at the loss of ecosystem services. It contributes about 18% of the total economic value, but it contributes about 25% of the loss, the land degradation, due to land degradation. So there is very severe land degradation in Africa. 25% of the total loss due to land degradation, which is very big. Other regions, they are not contributing as much. Now, who bears the largest cost, the burden of that loss? If we look at the total economic value, we are saying that the benefits are not internalized where the biomes exist. Meaning that we computed the local tangible benefits and the global benefits. 62% of the loss of total economic value is borne by the world, and only 38% is borne by the local people where the biomes exist. Meaning that land degradation is a global problem because the losses are borne by the global community, which is very important. Now, there's one other important question. Are the farmers, are the communities aware of the global benefits of carbon sequestration, for example? We did a study in Nigeria, and we had answered that simple question about ecosystem services. There is a provisioning services. Almost everybody knew the value of provisioning services. When we came to regulating services and supporting services, which is part of the total economic value, very few people knew. For example, only 8% of the communities, they were aware of carbon sequestration. Now, our policies, everything about climate change and all that have been talking about mitigation, which is carbon sequestration. You are talking a language which the local communities don't understand what you're talking about. But there are other aspects which people know beyond the provisioning services, and those are the cultural services. 2/3 of the community, they are aware of the cultural services that they derive from the biomes, which is very, very important. Spiritual aspects and all those things. Now, the question is, if a farmer is standing in front of a forest, deciding whether to cut it down and plant maize, or to leave the forest standing. The solution is, we did the analysis, look at the tangible local benefits with timber and without timber. You see that they are deriving only $90 US per hectare, tangible benefits, and when they plant maize, they derive about $600 US. What are they going to do?
Ephraim?
Cut the forest and plant forest. So we have a global problem, and land degradation should be addressed both at local level and at the local and global level. Thank you very much.
Thank you.